talking about COVID microaggressions. We're talking about violence related to anti-Asian sentiment. And I just want families to know that there are actions you can take to foster a sense of safety in your family, and to also work for and advocate for actual safety in our communities. Hey y'all, Cam here from Therapy Redeemed. Welcome to Office Hour with Your Therapist, episode 9. Today we are talking about kind of a heavy topic. At the time of this recording, this is days after the shooting in Atlanta, where 8 people were murdered and 6 of those people were Asian women. And kind of, wondering, how do we process this as a family? And then what do we do? What can we do moving forward to establish a sense of safety within our homes, in our neighborhoods, but also work together for actualized safety locally and globally, so that many lives could be saved, so that many would be kept alive. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going after here. We've got some ideas, and I'm taking this from the COVID-19 Family Assessment. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes, but that's free at my website, and you can go through that with your family, with your spouse, with a caregiver, and kind of think about how does that map onto our specific situation as a family. So that's kind of what I'm pulling this from right now. So 2 main ideas that I want to get out of the way is, how do we establish a sense of safety in our family? And then number 2, how do we actually work towards that safety in our neighborhoods and to the ends of the earth? Okay, that's kind of where we're headed with this. Just a couple things to consider about stressors. The main idea today is about stressors and how can we feel safe and actually be safe. Okay, so 4 ideas about stressors. We're thinking about anti-Asian sentiment, anti-Asian behaviors, and anti-Asian violence committed toward the Asian community. What can our families do in response to that? And what can we do to support our children as they are navigating these stressors as well? So 4 things to consider, then we'll jump into some practical interventions that you can apply in your family immediately. First idea, what is a stressor? This is any kind of cue or stimulus or information or presence of something in the environment that is a threat, and it inflicts some kind of worry or fear or pain on me as a person. It actually pulls me away from feeling safe and regulated. Okay, so that's what's considered a stressor as we think about mental health and just the safety of our children and our families and ourselves as individuals. It's that coming at us from the outside that is considered a stressor in the context of this conversation. A stressor can be chronic. It can be an ongoing stressor. Think about racism and the history of racism that has been impacting communities today and for past generations. Our views and our values about light-skinned people or skin tone compared with dark-skinned people, dark skin tone, and everything in between, right? That's considered a stressor, especially for the people who are on the lower end of that spectrum. Being accused or assumed that I have COVID because of the way I look, that's a stressor. That could be a stressor for your children. It could be a stressor for you too, maybe as you're watching this. Being bullied or harassed, either publicly or privately or at work, at school, because of the way you look, that is a stressor. That could be a stressful layer of your environment. So I really challenge you to, take a peek at that document in the show notes and see, how do those layers of threat show up for you and for your family? And are you able to identify those together? When we have a target, then we can start kind of addressing these things together. Number 2, the normative response to stress. So if a child is being bullied at school, someone says, Kung flu, or hey, go back to where you came from, take coronavirus with you, that kind of stuff. There's a normative response to that stress. And I wouldn't label that as a disorder. Whatever it is that that child is doing in response to that, I would be really hesitant to disorder that child, right? Because those behaviors Whatever they're doing is designed to keep us alive. It's protective. So there's a normative response to stress that we really want to highlight or observe in our children as we're helping make sense of what can they be doing instead of XYZ. Now, because of those stressors, that can be ongoing. Every single day I go to school, this person calls me a name. It's like they got something against me. That takes a toll on a child after a while. So we really want to consider their response to threat is normative, okay? We're not calling them out as weird or just, this wildly disobedient child. It's a normative response to stress. And although adults or grown-ups or administrators or teachers might see them, maybe they push the bully, or maybe they yell, or they call the bully a name, right? I'd be really hesitant to pathologize that normative response, okay? So we really want to understand that behavior is communication. That hurts me. That makes me feel sad. That makes me feel isolated. It makes me feel othered, okay? So that normative responses to stress, designed to keep us alive. And we know an overarching message that's been pervasive, especially in the US, is non-white bodies are less valuable than white bodies. And that's just an ongoing chronic stressor that people of color have to navigate. So we really want to understand and name that and recognize that, even hold space for that for our children when they're dealing with these stressors wherever they are. Third idea, biological response to stressors. So we've got the stressor, we've got the normative response to the stressor. Now we're talking about biological response to the stressor. Simplified version of this is that there are two types of nervous systems in our body, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. One is responsible for getting us up and moving, survival, running, fighting, that kind of stuff, okay? The other one is responsible for resting, digesting, kind of relaxing, sleep mode, right? I want to draw attention to that sympathetic nervous system, the one that's being triggered or activated when there's a threat in the environment, okay? So there's a biological response to threat that's happening in ourselves, for you watching this, and potentially for your children, whether they're walking out in the neighborhood, on the street, at school, at work, you're dealing with colleagues, maybe even, just in your own family system, extended family members. Our bodies are designed to keep us alive, to keep us physically alive, right? And so racism related to COVID-19, these stressors threaten that design. And so when those things are coming at me from the outside, there's going to be a biological response to that threat. When that part of our brain, the amygdala, senses threat, hormones are secreted, we start fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? And so that's a biological response to threat. Our executive functioning is compromised, the part of our brain that's responsible for decision making, judgment, logic, all of that. In some ways that might even shut down, right? And we're starting to think back in the limbic system. So there's a biological response to threat that I really want to acknowledge as I'm helping my children, even as I'm observing my children respond to threat. And then for myself, if I'm out in public and someone calls me a name or tries to bully me or harass me in some way, I'm understanding that I'm reacting biologically as well. So there's a stressor out there, there's the normative response to stress and the biological response to stress. Lastly, fourthly, we're thinking about the social impact of stress. Just kind of think about the impact on a child or a person or you when the daily message is, you're different, you don't belong here, you're not safe here, you're not wanted here, you're not even really valued here. That message coming at us from the outside really could potentially shape the way that we're gonna press into or pursue interactions with those folks socially, in the social circle, right? Relational, right? So there's a social impact of that stressor. We want to think about how might that be shaping the way our children are showing up in different types of spaces. So what do we do about that? Fine, you got these stressors out there. There's really nothing that we can do. A lot of stuff is beyond our control. What do we do about this? Well, I've got two main ideas that we're thinking about. Number one is, how do we establish a sense of felt safety in our own family, in our own household? how do we remove barriers to that? And then the second one, how do we establish and work for together a sense of actualized safety in public spaces, in our local neighborhoods and communities, and then ultimately throughout the world. I really encourage you to check out the PDF that I link in the show notes. It's got the whole list at the end of practical interventions and different sources there. But main takeaway for the first idea is creating space for our children to process aloud what's going on, whether that be these traumatic events that are happening recently and that have been happening for a really long time, or things that are coming up at school, things that are coming up at the workplace, things that are coming up in the neighborhood, wherever, but we're giving them a space to share and process these experiences aloud. Listen, validate, give space for emotion expression. We're not trying to correct their emotion or tell them to feel something different, but affirm and validate where they're coming from and what they are feeling. Just really sitting with another person, providing affirmation and validation with gentleness, empathy, and respect. Provide language for your children as a form of protection. Okay, we're not forcing it on them, but we're giving our children language with which to make sense of current events. And that's actually a form of protection. Why? Because as I've got all this stuff going on in my body or in my mind, or I hear people talking about things, I'm actually helping them make sense of that and process that. Because if they don't have that, it's going to come out in potentially different ways, or it might be internalized in different ways that could be harmful for their body and their soul and their mind and their heart, all of that, right? So providing language as a form of protection, even as a form of equipping them to make sense of what's going on right now. Discuss current events in age-appropriate ways, and you can find out what that means for you, but actually bring this conversation, bring these discussions to light in a way that they can access it depending on where they are developmentally, where they can kind of join you, and you can maybe even model for them how to talk about really big, difficult, complex types of situations and circumstances. See behavior as communication. We want to be able to shepherd our children as they're behaving. And when I say behavior, I'm not saying that, they're being bad or something like that, but just, whatever their behaviors are, whatever they're saying and doing, seeing that as some form of communication. They're trying to tell you something. And part of our job in patience is to shepherd that behavior in a way that's safe and pro-social for them and those around them. Draw, write, sing, play, get things out in a way where they can feel free to express and explore what's going on for them as they learn about different events happening in their local community and around the world. Narrate your own process aloud, almost as if, like a commentary when you're watching a sporting event. They're kind of narrating what's going on. You can almost close your eyes, and because of that narration, you're understanding, you can even visualize what's happening. In a similar way, our children might look to us and they hear us speaking, they see our body language, and we are narrating our own emotional process. And that's kind of a form of leadership in our own families, where our children can be looking to us and watching how we're processing something. It kind of gives them a template, at least a launch pad for them to consider. Model what it looks like to respond to stressors in adaptive ways. I personally am really good at modeling how to lose my temper or just, get really frustrated. My children probably have just a lot of kind of examples where I did it in, just not the best way. And my calling is to model for them helpful ways to respond to stressors. And that's something that you can bring into your family as well. Model adaptive responses to threat. The second idea is helping remove those actual barriers, or helping us actually be safe and removing the barriers to that reality. And that may look like advocating, doing research, independent research, finding small doable ways to get involved in your community, whether that be in person or online, joining different initiatives that are bent on and that are positioned and committed to dismantling these hurtful types of patterns that happen in our society. Interrupt racist jokes when you hear them, either online or in person. Acknowledge how power and privilege play a role in individual relationships and then community-wide, just recognizing that. Stay connected in meaningful, tangible ways with communities who are being impacted, with communities who are asking for help. Just keeping a pulse for what's needed in the community, what's going on right now, and just really listening to those communities. What do they need? What are they asking for? And just asking, hey, how can I help? And listening to them. A lot of communities put information out online asking for help in very specific, meaningful ways. We can listen to that and then respond in a way that you feel comfortable with, and to the extent that you have access to resources to contribute in that way. So I hope those ideas are helpful for you as a family, maybe even as an individual, as you're thinking about, hey, how do I respond? How do we respond to these traumatic, tragic events that are happening maybe close to us, or even if we're watching from a distance, what can we do about that? I hope this gives you a launch pad to discuss, what's doable for me and for us as a family. Thank you so much for joining me for these episodes. So thankful to be a part of your life story, and that you would invite me into your journey, just as a helper, as a guide, even as a fellow sojourner, because I don't have all the answers. I'm walking with you. If you've got more resources to add to this dialogue, feel free to share it in the comments below or email me, and I'll incorporate that into kind of future episodes, or even updating it on my website. So we're definitely in this together, and I don't think that we were meant to walk this road alone. And that's, videos like this and my office hour is just a really small way for us to recognize that and take action together. So thank you again for joining me today. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.